I want to thank everybody for taking their time this afternoon for joining us on our Ending the HIV Epidemic Advisory Council. Our meeting for December 2nd is here with us, and we'll be on here probably about an hour and a half, maybe a little shorter, maybe a little longer. I want to make sure Julie is actually recording this. Yes, okay, perfect. So I am Diane Bullock. I am currently the co-chair of the Advisory Council. Held this position for about 2 years with Claire Bolds. This is the first reconvening of the full body with our new members since our meeting in the summer that was orienting the new members to the work of the EHE Council. We're excited to be returning to our work here and acknowledging that many of the council work in fields that have been really busy over the past couple of months to year. And
I'm not hearing anything. Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can everybody hear me?
Thanks, Sean.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So just want to thank everybody for all their hard work with this and also with your regular day-to-day jobs. We have a pretty packed agenda today, so we're going to keep our comments pretty small and limited. Want to just start right now by asking for a little bit of introduction to the people on the call, and just start with your name, your organization, the role you represent there, your interest in serving on the council, and then something outside of work that's keeping you a little busy, interested, hobbies, whatever it may be. So we'll just kind of go start around. It may be easier if I just call on people rather than everybody just jumping in. I'll start with Brady.
Everyone, Bradetzkorn Morris. I am a community advocate, a person living with HIV. I am currently a U=U ambassador. I am the past co-chair of the Nashville Regional HIV Planning Council, and I'm also a member of the Tennessee Coalition to change or modernize HIV criminalization laws.
All right, thank you, Brady. Fatma?
I hope everyone can hear me. I'm Fatma. I am a researcher. I have a research background in an HIV pathogenesis group, and I have taken leave for the last 2 years. I've been home raising some young kids, but I'm actually just in the process of getting back into the lab. So this is happening in about a week. So this is my last few sort of days of getting our personal life sorted, so I can kind of go back into things full swing. Outside of work, my main commitment in Nashville has been I am a very active board member for our local mosque, the Islamic Center of Nashville, which is based in 12 South. That's been sort of the bulk of my community programming.
Welcome. Amna.
Good afternoon. I'm Amna Osman, CEO at Nashville Cares. Hope you're all doing well. Is there anything else I need to share?
You'd like to tell us what keeps you busy, what your hobbies are?
What my hobbies are? I actually was in an accident New Year's Eve last year, so I haven't been able to work out. So finally, after nearly a year, I'm back to spinning. I actually love to spin and bike ride, so I've been able to do that this last week, so I'm really excited to be back doing that. And just looking forward to the holidays. Got to see my kids after a year of not seeing them due to COVID. They live in Michigan, so that was fun, and they're coming for the Christmas holiday, so that's going to be exciting. So really fortunate and appreciative to see them.
Thank you. Dr. Hildreth. Dr. Hildreth, you're muted.
Hi, can you hear me now? Hi, I'm James Hildreth. I'm the president of Harry Medical College. I'm also an HIV researcher. I study the molecular mechanisms by which the virus escapes the immune system. I'm also a physician scientist, and what keeps me up at night is trying to pay the bills here at Meharry Medical College and keep my students trained and happy. I was very pleased that just before Thanksgiving, I was able to give my 961 kids $10,000 each to send them off for a happy Thanksgiving. That was one of the best days of my career so far. So anyway, happy to be with all of you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hildreth. Rich? Rich, I think you're muted still. I think we lost him. Meredith?
Hey everybody, my name is Meredith Brantley. I'm with the Tennessee Department of Health, and my role there as the HIV program director is to oversee our HIV surveillance, epidemiology, and prevention programs. I've been in that role for about 3 years. Hobbies, I don't currently don't really have any hobbies, but for the reason being I have a COVID baby that I'm wrangling alongside of an almost 3-year-old. So that's definitely what keeps me busy outside of work. So thanks, it's good to see y'all.
Welcome. Sarah?
My name is Zara Bounce, and I am actually not part of the advisory council at all. I'm here as a consultant who's going to be reporting back some assessment findings and some recommendations through just work that I've done with other EHE work groups and the leadership team on trying to figure out how to make EHE as strong and as impactful as possible. So I'll be sharing that report out in a little bit. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Sarah. Morgan?
Hey everyone, can you hear me? So I'm Morgan Service. I am the new preventive health strategist at the Metro Public Health Department. This is my 4th day, so I'm just getting used to everything. Before this, I was at Big Brothers Big Sisters of Middle Tennessee, and I was a product manager for LGBTQ inclusion there. And outside of work, hobbies, I've gotten into strength training recently, so I like to continue doing that. Yeah.
Thank you, Morgan. Rich, were you able to jump back on?
I think he's having audio issues and can't hear us.
I think so, yeah. Dr. Shaw Kai.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joanna Shaw Kai. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm an infectious disease specialist. I've been at the health department for about 5.5 years, and recently took over the role of overseeing the Ryan White Part A program, the viral hepatitis C navigation program, and also TB elimination, in addition to some other duties, including seeing patients. In addition to that, keeping me busy, I also am the treasurer of my youngest kid, PTO, at her school. That keeps me very busy, surprisingly. And also I am in my last year of getting my master's in public health. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Sean?
Hi, Sean Kelly. I'm ID faculty at Vanderbilt and the medical director of the Comprehensive Care Clinic. We're the primary care medical home for over 3,700 patients living with HIV. In my free time, what's kept me busy isn't really a hobby, but it's event planning. So Claire and I and a few others at Vanderbilt and out in the community have been planning this gala to benefit our patients and serve as an outreach event for the past 2 years that we've postponed 3 times now because of the pandemic. But it's actually happening this Saturday, the Ruby Gala. So I'm now going to shamelessly plug it. So Marathon Music Works at 7 p.m. Open bar catered by celebrity chef Manish Chawan, the late party at L27 Rooftop Lounge at the Westin. This will be a fundraising event, not just for our patients and people living with HIV in Middle Tennessee, but also an outreach event to really get the non-medical sectors who don't know much about HIV to really buy into the ending the HIV epidemic concept, which I think is going to be crucial for our city to really achieve the goals. If you are interested in more information about it, feel free to send me a message in the chat.
Sean. Claire, go ahead.
So hi everyone. I'm one of your other co-chair along with Dr. Bullock, Claire Bolds. I work with the Southeast Age Education and Training Center out of Vanderbilt. And Sean is very kind to say that I've been working hard on the gala because, to be honest, he has done like 98% of the work, 99. So what keeps me busy, I also have a COVID baby who is 9 months old. So that's, we'll blame her for why I have been less involved in the gala.
Thanks, Claire. And last but not least, Julie.
I'm Julie Thacker.
Sorry, trying to get used to having two audio, and I've heard I've been having audio issues on my computer. Julie Thacker, the Division Director for Prevention and Wellness with Metro Public Health Department. Oh geez, what's been keeping me busy? Moving. It's really, you forget how stressful the pre-moving is leading up to the moving. So we're not even a quarter past yet. So very excited to be almost on our way to Virginia. But you know, of course, it's a lot of work to get there. So that and a lot of podcasts to help me while I'm packing. And I think, did we miss Dr. Ahankai?
Yes, I'm
Sorry.
here.
An introduction?
Yeah, my name is Ima Ahankai. I'm physician and researcher at Vanderbilt. I see patients with Dr. Kelly at the CCC, and my research really focuses on the adolescent and young adult population and targeting using community-based and M-health-driven interventions to improve outcomes along the care continuum, both domestically and internationally. I have 3 kids between the ages of 4 and 11, so they take up most of my time, but they're old enough for me to insist that they don't bother me when I'm on the bike. So Amna, maybe one day I'll actually get outside on the bike and we can go on a ride together, because that's my happy space away from the kids.
Be great.
Welcome. I think I got everybody. Some of these friends are jumping around, but
Should we try
we'll go
Rich
ahead
again? It sounds like Rich might have
Is he
gotten
back?
his.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah.
Okay, Rich, did you get your audio fixed?
If you're talking, we can't hear you.
I think you're still muted, Rich. All right.
Thank you.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we're all using different video chat things and they work, but then you use WebEx and for some reason I can't hear anybody. I'm like, oh no, what do I do? So the solution was update audio drivers. How about that? So I can hear you. It's great to see faces. I'm presuming the question is how we've been keeping busy in general or for fun. What was the actual question?
Just actually introducing yourself, your organization, and just one little thing about what keeps you busy.
Ah, gotcha. I'm the executive director of the Music City Prep Clinic, and well, the clinic's been keeping me busy.
Very well. Thanks for joining us. All right. I think we finally have hit everybody. So thanks to everybody. Nice to learn a little bit about everyone here and see some faces. I will now kick it over to Julie for quite a few updates.
Thank you, Dr. Bullock. So in interest of time, I am going to save some of the updates for email and just hit some of the highlights. So one of the most important things I think to share is just a little bit about changes in the structure to the EAP work groups, and by a little bit of change, it really is just a little bit of change.
So, of course, the advisory council continues to be staffed by the health department, and with my transition, my move to Virginia, Morgan Service, who we're so grateful to have on board and able to have her attending today, will be your main health department point of contact, and of course she will, support the co-chairs and in their work as well. So continuing to be convened, and everybody can see the slide, correct? I'm hoping. Yeah, so
Yes, Julie.
continuing to be convened by the health department will be the prevention work group and the U equals U task force. And then we're very fortunate to have received the offer to have the equity work group and the trauma-informed care and cultural humility and responsiveness steering committee convened by the Meharry Center for the Study of Social Determinants of Health. It's a very appropriate fit, and we were very grateful that they're able to step into that role. Otherwise, structurally, nothing's going to change there. Both of the co-chairs who were co-chairing that group are continuing in that role, and the structure for the trauma-informed care and cultural humility and responsiveness team will continue as well. And then the Nashville Prep Coalition, which is a part of EAG, is and has always been convened by Dr. Berteau and Tariq Smith with the Meharry Wellness Center. So that's going to continue. But I did want to let you know that some of those structural changes have occurred, and because some of the feedback that we have gotten is that we need to do a little bit better of a job communicating about what the structure of EAG looks like. So please let us know if you have any questions about that. And then the other main update that I was asked to communicate from the work groups that aren't presenting today. So Brady is going to be able to share a little bit about the U equals U task force, and we're expecting Dr. Brown to be on to give us an update about the trauma-informed care work. So hopefully she'll be on soon. But from the rest of the work groups, their main ask to the advisory council at this point is to look into your staff and see who are interested, there's been a lot of staff transitions, of course, during COVID, and we know everybody's bandwidth is stretched. But we want, folks who are interested and engaged, and maybe who aren't, some of the usual suspects who have already been recruited into EAG, to come and participate and bring their great ideas and, help us move our projects and our work forward. That's really what the work groups need. We have great volunteers who come and show up and help, who have been helping us move the work forward for almost 2 years now through COVID, working virtually. But we are, looking to recruit. And then with that, I will kick it over to Brady and change what I am sharing.
Can I ask a quick question? This is Meredith, before you transition. In terms of recruiting, are there certain committees or work groups or task forces that you want to kind of strengthen, or is it kind of any and all that you're looking to recruit?
I mean, that's a good question. I think all are open, all of our work groups. So it is a balancing act of, we have the guidelines that were created by the equity work group for inclusion and diversity. So we want to be mindful when we're recruiting into new work groups that we're reviewing those guidelines, and that the makeup of the work groups is reflective of what was set forth in that and what is in the nominations and recruitment plan for the council. However, all of these groups are open for people who are interested to join. I think, all of these groups have interested and engaged, folks who are showing up and continuing to move the work forward. A lot of them, however, are, either kind of higher level or middle management, and who are just strapped and who really can't, dedicate much time between meetings to help progress the work. And that's what we really need. We need enthusiastic, workers who want to take a project and run with it and support, making some of this work move forward. Because a lot of it is, a lot of the work can be accomplished with human resources. Not all of it, but a lot of it can be. Specifically, I think really the groups that are in a transitional period, the equity work group, we're at this point where we've been doing a lot of, kind of the big landscape work, creating the equity lens, defining and operationalizing what inclusion means for this body. And now we're really kind of moving towards how can we start to just really get into, more project-focused work. The Trauma-Informed Care and Cultural Humility Steering Committee, really that's kind of going to have its own recruitment effort because that is in a transitional period too, and Lauren can talk a little bit about that. And the prevention work group, so it has two focuses. It's there's the community education focus group and then the provider education focus group. And I definitely think the prevention work group is open to new recruits who can help us kind of make the work go forward.
Thank you.
Are you saying the right thing, Brady?
Yeah, I see it now. Hey everyone, Bradetzkorn Morris. I am a member of the U=U task force, as Julie said, and I am excited to share with you all a proposal that we have been working on. We have been trying to get a localized U=U type campaign, similar to like San Antonio has one called Hello, Can You Go, San Antonio? And at first we were like, the tagline was like, do you know U=U? But I am not a marketing major. That is not my skill set. But I had a dream the other night about probably changing this to like, let's make some beautiful music by hitting all the right notes. That being, the first note would be getting tested. The other note would be, getting engaged in care. The other note being retained in care. But working on a very localized campaign of people living with HIV and those not living with HIV here in Middle Tennessee, in which we could, highlight Nashville as well. And we were going to do like a photo session with these advocates, local people living with HIV, in front of very recognizable Nashville symbols like the Grand Ole Opry, the Ryman, Meharry, TSU, and engage the community and letting those of us living with HIV work to try to be part of the solution, and just feeling more engaged. Because we know that this message of U=U, it is so new. A lot of people aren't completely comfortable in sharing it. So we are trying to just amplify the message and making it easier for those within the community to talk about it and feeling more of an ownership with it. So we have put together a proposal, and we've like fleshed it all out in the only like money wise, we're looking at a budget about $10,000, because we want to be sure to not only highlight our local HIV community, but also be able to reimburse them for their time in doing this project, and then also incentivize them using their local social media channels to also promote U=U locally. And I do know that that we do have some new toolkits and everything coming through Prevention Access Campaign, and it'll give us another opportunity to highlight those and share those with the community. Anything I missed, Julie?
That was great. Thank you, Brady. Yeah, I think our ask to the council is, it's a pretty modest proposal, and we think it'll have a huge impact, and a lot of it is because we have a lot of scrappy folks who can, put together a pretty small budget and figure out what we can do with the human resources that are at the table.
Julie,
we've
I was just gonna say one thing I did forget is also through this project, we would create a stockpile of localized photos of people living with HIV and it would be free and available to any organization and community-based organization and nonprofit in Middle Tennessee or Nashville area to use those pictures for free. And then that way they're not like pulling photos from random folks that nobody knows in local ads and things like that, and make that available and free to the community as well.
Hey, Brady and Julie, this is Meredith again. I think being new, I apologize for not knowing the answer to this, but is there a dedicated pot of funds tied to EG Nashville that you're kind of pitching to use, or what's your mechanism to secure these funds, or are you do you have opportunities where you're going to be kind of submitting a proposal for funding, or can you just kind of share a little bit more about that?
We're not funded at all, so we are we are the scrappy cousin of Memphis that I know they have the first round HRSA funding. We were not funded, and so a lot of the work over the last couple of years has been some of that foundational work just to get the kind of the human capital to the table and to figure out what are the priorities and what projects we want to move forward, and getting small pots of funds. So we've gotten a few small grants to help advance the work, and that's really the approach we've taken is, get some of these small grants and then use that to build off of that and, hopefully be able to go after some larger pots of money in the next, year or two.
Okay, so in terms of this project, for example, is our role in part helping to identify potential opportunities to fund this type of activity?
Love that, because
Okay.
we've reached some dead ends. We have been working on that from the task force, but we've reached a couple of dead ends, and we really think that the impact is definitely worth the amount tied to it, if not and some. So
yeah.
Okay,
so will you share this, please?
I'm sorry?
Will you be able to share this? Can we have access to this document?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Brady, I think this is great, but one question that I had is with the Prevention Access Campaign, I know that they have tools that are already available that are downloadable and we can customize them to our state. It would kind of be saving dollars. I know that the photos and everything would be representing people who are either living with HIV or advocates in Tennessee, but that might be a way, if we wanted to fulfill this without resources right away, is to really talk to them about customizing some of the resources that they have, because they have some really amazing work and they actually get a lot of funding to do that. So that might be something for us to find an opportunity for partnership. I don't know if that's been pursued or not.
You're right, Amna. Yeah, there is. It's called positiveseries. Or you can go to positiveseries.com, and there is a whole series of customizable, downloadable posters, ID cards, all kinds of stuff. But in my attempts in the past of trying to get that localized or being used locally, there hasn't been much interest, and it seemed to kind of get blown over. So we were hoping that doing a more localized campaign and highlighting our actual community here in Middle Tennessee, our HIV community here in Middle Tennessee and in Nashville, that it would garner more interest. but you are right. There are some tools already available out there, but we haven't seen those utilized yet.
Yeah, and I know their CEO personally, so if there's been any issues, I could reach out and try to help you out to get a meeting and see why they haven't been responsive, because they should be supporting states across the country who want to customize and be able to really promote U equals U in their respective states across the country. So I'm surprised that they haven't been very responsive. But that would be the best way to go, and it's in partnership. And I think maybe even if we wanted to get folks who are local, if they already have, they probably are using great marketing, companies or consultants that have these materials and they've looked at them from all aspects. So maybe we could ask them if we could get some local folks to really customize it to our area.
And I'll tell you, one of the other things too that a lot of our things are going to be digital, but a lot of the comments that we have heard, these local ASOs and CBOs, when it comes down to printing, nobody has the extra money for a printing budget either. And that was another barrier into trying to help get some of these materials out into the community as well.
Yeah. Well, if you want me to facilitate, maybe that's where we start, because I know they have money and they should be supporting states. I would say, let's try to leverage resources and start there and see where we get. That would be my recommendation. But I think it's a great idea. So kudos to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Amna.
You're welcome.
Right, and then we also have a quick update from Dr. Lauren Brown. I'm going to stop sharing this.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to see if I can share mine. I think you might need to change it, Julie. Can you add me as a sharer?
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out, you're so far down the screen, usually I just drag and drop the little thing, but I can't scroll down that far, so I'm going to keep working on it. Maybe you can start talking.
Okay, sure. Well, thank you very much for allowing me on the agenda. I have just a very brief PowerPoint to kind of keep myself on track here. Wanted to update you all about our progress with the Tennessee Center for AIDS Research Developmental Core Award, in which we have been conducting pre-implementation stage research to inform our citywide adoption of trauma-informed HIV care. It's a lot of jargon that just came out of my mouth. Understand if I need to repeat some of that. Can you see this? Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So just really quickly, the aims of the project is just a one-year project. And so to first conduct a citywide map of we chose 5 institutions that are really doing kind of the bulk of HIV services. And so those are CARES, CCC, Meharry Wellness, StreetWorks, and Metro Public Health Department. And from that, create a citywide map, and then to conduct one-on-one interviews with the intent being to identify areas that are modifiable within our system, so that we can really look at barriers and facilitators of implementing trauma-informed care citywide. In HIV systems of care, of course, not the whole city, although some cities have done that. So there are bigger things that have been done with this, in case anyone's concerned about the citywide implementation. But it is a big undertaking, and so it will take some time. And so basically at this point, we have conducted, I have engaged 63 individuals, and that is duplicative. So some folks are on here a couple of times, but you can see with different institutions who have engaged with, and kind of how many folks. This is a rough estimate. These are not exact numbers, but in each of our discussion groups. And then for the interviews, we have so far conducted 9 interviews. And you can see when we began recruitment, we began with CCC. I believe we might have 1 or 2 left, and then we'll probably be maxed out at CCC, and then we'll keep going through the list until we're hoping to get anywhere from 8 to 12 individuals at each institution. The domains that we're going to be looking at to really understand barriers and facilitators of implementation are according to the Consolidated Framework for Implementation Research. And so those kind of, there's several different domains, but we are specifically looking at inner setting factors and outer setting factors, with some of those inner setting factors being implementation climate, organizational culture, relative priority, access to knowledge and information within each institution, available resources, how compatible it is in institutions, networks and communications. And then with the outer setting factors, cosmopolitanism, so how organizations work with external partners to fluidly provide care, and then also external policies and incentives and peer pressure and patient needs. So this is something that I borrowed from Larry Harold, and he is with UAB. And we are working with UAB right now as our implementation science hub for another implementation science project, doing something very similar. So I thought this kind of explained a little bit how this works, that the outer setting factors influence the inner setting factors. And you can see that kind of the underlying causal mechanism between the outer setting factors and the inner setting factors are that organizations adopt new practices based upon resources in the environment. And so really that kind of follows the resource dependence theory, which is what we're trying to kind of set up, how we can leverage resources within our metro whole system. And then you see how the inner setting factors ultimately influence implementation outcomes. And so that really boils down to theory of organizational readiness within each institution. So we're hoping to leverage a whole system to help move together and sort of borrow resources and share resources. And so some recommendations that have come out of this just very preliminarily have been that there's a need for a Metro executive leadership team to really kind of act as a steering committee to oversee this process. Also really to just kind of do this synergistically and bring our leaders together of our institutions. And then also there's been a discussion of should we standardize instruments, you know, to use something uniformly throughout our institutions. And then should implementation be incremental? I think the short answer is almost always it has to be. I think that's also the best solution that doesn't shock a system. And then last, should one institution sort of drive the process? And so where this has kind of landed has been the discussion of the Center for the Study of Social Determinants of Health, sort of thinking about what role you know, we can play in being sort of a driver of this process as far as training, providing implementation and sustainment facilitation, things of that nature, helping people create infrastructure and capacity in their systems to do this, even down to like a program evaluation component. So next steps are to conduct a process map consensus meeting, complete the one-on-one interviews, and of course, analyze the data. Then we want to share the findings internally within our EHE communities, and then publish the findings at this point, probably in 2 different publications with members of each institution as co-authors, so that this is really truly a shared EHE product. And from there, we are considering writing an R34 to begin implementation. So that's all I have. I'm going to stop sharing so that I can open this up for questions.
Lauren, can I just ask, it's a quick technical question. Are your slides going to be available to us later? There were some points I missed and I wanted to review.
Sorry, I was trying to see who's asking. I can't see.
This is Fatima.
Oh, Fatima. Hello. Yes, sure, of course. Okay, well, if there aren't any questions, thank you for having me, and I look forward to discussing more.
Thanks, Lauren. Appreciate you being here. And thank you, Brady, for your update as well. So we will move right along here. it is time again for co-chair nominations and elections. It has been 2 years, so I am just going to read directly from the bylaws as a quick review here. Co-chairs, one governmental and one non-governmental, will be selected by the council membership. Co-chairs shall serve for 2-year terms with a maximum of 2 consecutive terms or 4 consecutive years, whichever is greater. In the event of a co-chair vacancy of an unexpired term, nominations will be made at the meeting immediately following the vacancy or a specially called meeting, with the election at the subsequent meeting or a specially called meeting. Co-chair duties include calling meetings, presiding over all meetings, setting the agenda, establishing quorum, calling votes, and signing documents relative to the action taken by the council. So I am going to go ahead and call for nominations for a governmental representative. So eligible people include Dr. Bullock, Dr. Shaw Kai Kai, and Meredith Brantley. So Dr. Bullock has served 2 years and is eligible for another 2-year term. So do we have any nominations?
I would like to renominate Dr. Bullock.
Any other nominations? All right, Dr. Bullock, do you accept the nomination?
I do.
Okay, then we can go ahead and vote by a show of hands to re-elect Dr. Bullock. So if you have your camera off, just send something to the chat saying yes or no. I'm seeing a lot of hands. Right. I'm pretty sure we have, pretty sure that's unanimous, I think. So we will go ahead and congratulate Dr. Bullock on another term.
Right. Thank you, everybody, and thank Claire. So I am calling for nominations for the non-governmental representative. Claire is eligible for a 2nd-year term as well as everyone else on the council has eligibility for that. Are there any other nominations in addition to Claire for the non-governmental representative on the council? Right. I do not see any other hands or any other nominations. So I will nominate Claire for a 2nd term as the non-governmental representative. Everybody, for a show of hands, confirm her as the non-governmental co-chair for a 2nd-year term. All right. Once again, unanimous. So Claire and I will, as long as Claire's willing to accept the nomination, which I should have done before. I think we had talked about this before. Claire, do you want to verbally accept the nomination? I think we already have. Okay. So we will be honored to serve as your co-chairs again for a 2nd term as your co-chairs of the advisory council. All right, I'm going to kick it over to Claire. We're going to talk about our recurring meeting time and date for our meetings going forward into the new year.
Thank you, Dr. Bullock. So as you all know, these past 2 years have been pretty chaotic for people who work in healthcare. It's been very, very difficult for us to find a meeting time that works for everybody. And you are all very busy people. So I'm just crossing my fingers and hoping that I can throw out a time and it will work for everybody. So that would be this time. That's the 1st Thursday of the month at 2:30 p.m. And this would be every other month. Will that work for everybody? Maybe it's easier if I ask if there's anybody that it doesn't work for. And you can just unmute and shout. All right.
It's the only thing else is that the state sometimes usually has its COVID updates around this time. I think now it's biweekly, but that hopefully those numbers go down and it will be less. But they do send out notes. So if this time works for everyone, then I'll be willing to stick to this time and just catch up by reading the notes.
Okay,
I tend to have inpatient service the first, it's pretty variable, but it seems to be the first Thursday of the month for the next year or so, but it's variable. So I'll just try to work around that.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, then we might try to go ahead and stick with that time just to keep things sort of simple and so we can get it on everybody's calendars early. And, you know, let me or me and Dr. Bullock know if you're not going to be able to make it in advance or if you can only make part of it. And, you know, of course, we can try and catch you up on things later on. All right. So I am going to hand this off now to Zara Bounce. So Zara has been working with EHE through a grant provided by the Center for Nonprofit Management over the past several months to assess our processes and opportunities to increase shared leadership and improve our structure. So she is going to share a little bit about what she has learned so far, and I will let you take it away, Zara.
Thank you so much, Claire. Yeah, I'm going to keep my camera off because I think my internet is not reliable enough to do both video and to share. So I'm going to do that, and I'll try to turn it on after I'm done with my presentation. So I'm going to go over, I have a short PowerPoint that I'm going to share with you all that provides information on the assessment process that EHE stakeholders went through, share back results from that assessment, and then share out recommendations that came out of discussions with various stakeholders involved with EHE. Then I'll have time, I think we'll have time for questions and comments at that time from you all and additional discussion. If you have any thoughts or questions as I'm going through any of the slides, feel free to put them in the chat and I'll make sure I see those at the end of the presentation. So I'm free to do that. So I'm going to okay, can everyone see that? Is that okay?
Your audio went a little choppy. I'm sorry. I
okay.
just wanted
Can you
to
hear me
let
now?
you know your audio went a little choppy, and I can, but if you continue to have problems, do you want me to resend you the call-in number? Because I found it, you know, being on both, you'll just have to turn the volume all the way down and mute yourself on one, but it is a little bit more reliable.
Yeah, how about you send that to me right now so I can just make sure
you have that in case you need it.
Thank you.
You are sounding good for now if you want to get ready while she's sending that, or you want to get started.
Okay, sounds good. Perfect. Yeah, and Julie, you can just send me that and I'll try and switch over. So what we're going to do, like I said, we're going to go over the assessment findings, recommendations, and have discussion, and then have time for questions and comments as well. So just some information about who I am. I am a independent consultant. I have a background in public health and actually worked for the Metro Public Health Department for several years, worked at Vanderbilt Medical College for a year or so. And now I'm working on my own, working with organizations, nonprofits, collaboratives, particularly to look at equity and equity in practice and what does it actually look like and how do organizations embody that. So that's just a little bit about who I am. So I want to kind of go over what the purpose of the assessment was. So leadership, particularly members of the leadership team, wanted to better understand partners' perceptions of EHE overall, including what engagement looks like and feels like, what participation feels like, and why participation is how it is, and really examine what the structures that are supporting EHE look like and why and do they work. So it really was to get this broad understanding of the strengths of EHE as well as challenges and any recommendations for improvement in the future. So there were two main components of the assessment process. So the first one was a survey, and this included 8 total questions. So 2 questions on participant characteristics. We had 5 questions using a Likert scale. So to what extent do you agree to disagree? And there were 28 statements within those 5 questions. So it actually was quite a lot of information we were collecting in those 5 questions. And then we had 1 open-ended question. We had data collection happen through the month of August this year through SurveyMonkey. We had 19 total surveys completed for a participation rate about 42%. We had a second part of the assessment was the key informant interviews. And so these interviews covered 31 total questions, and they included topics like, how do people value EHE? What does trust to look like and feel like in the organization? What does communication look like? Is it effective? How is diversity, equity, inclusion? And then how is the structure supporting or not supporting the work of EHE? We had interviews from the end of August to the beginning of September, and they were all virtual. They were all held through Zoom. They were recorded. We had 7 interviews completed, and out of the people that were reached out to, we had about then a 63% participation rate, which was pretty high. So I want to dig into the survey findings first, and then I'll go over the key informant interview. The majority of people responded to the survey were part of an academic institution or a government institution of some kind, and then you can kind of see the breakdown after that. Is this VO or a AIDS service provider of some kind? A majority of respondents participated a little bit, so they weren't brand new to the club.
Sorry,
they've been working with EHE
you're kind of choppy again.
We had kind of a lot of people that have been involved with EHE for a little bit.
Sarah, do you want to try calling in? You're kind of breaking up again.
Let me call in.
Okay, I think we're hearing them.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we've got you now.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. It's always when you need to do something on the computer that things just fall apart a little bit. So let me get back to the presentation. All righty. So one of the questions that was in the survey was, is EHE generally moving in the right direction? And it was, again, from strongly agree to disagree. So folks primarily do agree that EHE is moving in the right direction, which is encouraging. The vast majority said agree. And then we've got, again, strongly agree to somewhat agree is really, really high as well. Another part of the survey looked at collaboration between EHE partners. And so again, you'll see this chart that says, I value the relationships with partner organizations and EHE. Again, the vast majority said they strongly agree with that statement, which is also, again, very positive and encouraging. When we ask the question, you know, are people able to be upfront with their partner organizations regarding their capacity to support EHE? Again, the vast majority said that they can do that to a great extent. And then almost half of respondents said that that they believe that what their organization brings to EHE is respected and appreciated to a great extent. So that's kind of midpoint. And then about 37% somewhat agree with that statement. So maybe a little bit more work to do there, but still positive findings there. So also, this is a lot of text. So I'm going to just pick out a couple of the key points here. So the vast majority of survey participants really disagreed with the idea that EHE hinders their organization from meeting its own goals. That's about 79% said that, agree with that statement. Almost half of respondents said they were able to partner with other organizations because of their work with EHE. And that, you know, one concern was that, you know, are smaller organizations being taken advantage of by larger partner organizations? And the vast majority disagreed with that statement. They said that that was not the case. So again, pretty encouraging findings here. So another component we looked at was equity, diversity, and inclusion. So one of the questions was asking, does the collaborative have a commitment to developing actions that challenge persistent inequities rather than upholding or normalizing the status quo? Again, this is kind of a mix. Most people said agree, to strongly agree. It seems like there is a commitment, and as I'll get into with the key informant interviews, most people said there is a commitment, but maybe the follow through isn't there quite yet. The practice maybe isn't there quite yet. That's going to require more work, but there is a commitment to challenging inequities in EHE's work. Again, like I said, let's see here. We looked at, you know, what do people feel, you know, do they have like an equal voice around the table in their participation of EHE? And again, more than 60% of respondents said that they agree that they do have an equal voice. Again, positive and encouraging information there. So I'm going to dig into the key informant interview information now. So there were certain characteristics about the people that participated in the interviews. So again, most people worked in either research or prevention or community engagement, and then others maybe worked in training or support services. Most participants have been involved with EHE since the planning stages, so very early on in the process of EHE. Many people that participated with the interviews were really actively engaged with EHE, so by attending work group meetings, serving as co-chairs, or serving in other leadership roles. We asked about, you know, do your organization support EHE? And they said yes. Their other staff members that they work with serve on the EHE, other work groups or the advisory council or attend meetings. So again, people that have been involved with EHE for a while. Most of them were involved, like I said, through the planning stages. So talking and digging into the organizational involvement of EHE, they said that their organizations are involved with EHE through participation on work groups or appointment of leadership on the advisory council. But one place that came up over and over again was that there really was no kind of sense of responsibility among their organization and their organizational leaders to implement EHE priorities. That alignment definitely existed between what their organization was doing and their goals and their mission and vision, but that this overlap was not intentional to match what EHE was doing, that it kind of just happened to be the case. When we looked at the questions around value of EHE, people definitely saw value with what EHE was doing, that they were able to connect with other people, collaborate, partner with other organizations, and create sort of more substantial change in the community as a result. And they said that they themselves see that value, the organizations see the value of EHE. But one thing that came up was that you know, one question was asked, do community members and people that are impacted by EHE, are they seeing the value of the collaborative? And most people said no, because most community members are unlikely to know about EHE. And so it kind of came up that it is a bit problematic, because if EHE is for the public really doesn't know about EHE, and that there's something that maybe is a mismatch there that might need to change. So then when we looked at trust, we asked questions about what does trust look like among EHE partners and members, people that are a part of EHE. Most people said that they have high levels of trust between themselves and the other people that are involved with EHE. We did, though, come up, and some folks brought up this idea of distrust that exists, and it is rooted mostly in historical conflicts, as well as sort of some recent incidences of conflict within different organizations in Nashville. So divisions between HIV service providers were said to be deeply rooted, and many of the conflicts and distrust seem to come from how most of EHE partners really are competing from the same bucket of funding. So that creates competition and can lead to challenges. And also some respondents said that they maybe didn't trust some of the partners in sharing correct information to patients, that there was a fear, anecdotal data and information about experiences that they've seen for that happening. So there is trust, and yet there's this sort of undercurrent of distrust happening under the surface. So again, something to really kind of keep in mind there. So we also then looked at communication, and overall, it was really clear that communication just needed to be strengthened throughout EHE. We found that there are really three main spaces for communication to happen. So we have communication within the work groups themselves, between work groups, and then between leadership. So like the advisory council, so you all and the leadership team and work groups. So there are kind of these three environments where communication can happen. So within work groups, we saw that communication was sort of variable. For some respondents, they said it was great, that things, you know, we're getting emails, we're finding out what we need to get done, we're getting all the information we need. But then others said that many of the work groups feel sort of confused or unclear about their purpose, their roles, you know, what the connection is to the work that they're doing in their work groups to the plan, and so leading to some frustration and lack of clarity among participants there. We talked about communication between work groups, and the majority of participants said, one, that was non-existent, that many people didn't even know what all of EHE work groups were, so that's definitely a barrier there. And then when we also talked about leadership and work groups communication, again, they said that it really was non-existent. Many people didn't know that there was a leadership team along with the advisory council, and they felt kind of disconnected from what the advisory council was doing when they're kind of in the work groups. They didn't really know what was happening there. And then another piece we looked at was structure. So in particular, what came out of the structure conversations was that folks, because of the lack of communication, felt like they were operating in silos in their own little work groups and weren't really knowing what the big picture was with EHE broadly. Felt unconnected with EHE's plan. So the big plan that has been developed by so many community members and stakeholders felt like the work that's happening is not connected to what has been developed in the plan. And that there's just a lack of capacity among EHE's members to fulfill the plan because, and I think you all talked about this in today's meeting, there isn't dedicated funding for EHE's work. So that does make it really challenging. Also came up with challenges because of COVID, you know, having virtual meetings versus in person, that many of you all are involved in infectious diseases. So your focus absolutely shifted. So it just kind of became challenging to move the work forward a little bit. We talked about how shared leadership was occurring across all the work groups. So people were taking ownership of, you know, moving work forward, but that it could be deepened. People could take more on, and that it could kind of be more widespread, so that not just a few people are doing it, but that it's kind of spreading across the board. And then we looked at diversity, equity, and inclusion. So again, this was sort of a mixed mixed bag. Some people really felt like the collaborative has done a lot and is doing amazing work in its DEI work through the work groups, through the leadership team. But other respondents really said that they were frustrated by the lack of diversity. And so there are particular populations that were named that there's just a lack of representation within EHE. And so you can see the list there. It's a long list, and it's by, particularly by race, by ethnicity, by HIV status, by gender, and then type of organizations as well. So we kind of see that there's a variety of folks that are missing maybe from the table. We talked specifically about the challenges of engaging people who are living with HIV due to stigma and fear. And then another barrier, and again, this goes back to structure, is just there's a lack of clarity in the scope of the particular work groups. What are the roles that are available to participate in EHE with? And then what's the funding? How do you support the work for people that want to engage? We also talked about, is equity happening in practice? So in the work that's kind of the projects that are moving forward with EHE, is equity part of those projects? And at this point, it was stated that it's more of a guiding principle that is this large commitment, but that it's not really been put into action quite yet. Or if it has, the people aren't aware of that at this point. So overall, what we found was that EHE's really laid the foundation to end the epidemic in Middle Tennessee, but that there are challenges that exist. And really what came out of this, and I'll get into detailed recommendations in a second, but that really we need clearer roles and processes, better communication, more clear communication, and then additional funding would really support EHE at this time. And that a way to do this is to leverage people that are champions with EHE now, and to really kind of re-strategize and figure out how do you move forward and bringing more people on board and really kind of being able to tackle some of these bigger issues. So I want to ask, before I jump into recommendations, does anybody have any questions at this time?
Hey, Sarah, thank you for that. When you mentioned a leadership team,
yeah,
which leadership team are you referencing?
Yeah, so the structure of EHE is that you'll have the advisory council, which is you all, and then under you all, there's actually another group called the leadership team, and these are people that are a little bit more boots on the ground, but providing guidance and support for sort of other leadership needs for EHE, and then under them are the work groups. So that's sort of the structure. I will say, Julie, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that particular point around the leadership team, though.
So it was, I don't want to put it so bluntly, but I'm going to because I can't think of the right words. It was a little bit of a failed experiment, if I'm being honest. I think it was a good idea, but maybe we didn't have the right people fully at the table. Because, the intention was to have some folks with a vision and big voices come in and help move EHE, the rollout of the work groups, kind of some more of the strategic direction, especially around communication. And, we had attendance wane, kind of early on, and then just not a lot of kind of uptake of a leadership role among that team. So we basically, when we got down to less than half participation, we decided to disband and kind of rethink about what that team could look like. Not necessarily abandon the idea altogether, and definitely not without appreciation to the people who were coming and bringing good ideas to the table. It just wasn't kind of a fully functioning group.
Dr. Shakake, does that clarify that particular body?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions at this point? Like I said, I'm going to go into recommendations after we move forward from this. Okay. And like I said, if you have any questions or thoughts as we're moving forward, you can also put it in the chat, and I will make sure I see that too. Okay, well, I'm going to move into recommendations then at this point. So I want to go over the process for which these recommendations came out. So I came up with a set of recommendations based on the findings. And so based on work that I've done in other organizations, based on the literature and what other organizations are doing, came up with an initial list of recommendations. I shared these out with stakeholders involved with EHE. We had a two-hour virtual meeting, so a total of a total of a 4-hour meeting in middle of November. So at that first meeting, we came up with stakeholders were able to brainstorm additional recommendations. And then at the second meeting, we went through a prioritization process to figure out, what was most impactful and how much effort would kind of each recommendation take. So I'm going to go over the recommendations, and they're organized by impact and effort level. So it's a lot of text, so I'm going to go over this and read through this. So the first thing that came out was really looking and improving the structure of EHE and then examining diversity, equity, and inclusion. So you'll see here high impact and high effort. So the 4 strategies, the recommendations that are listed below are those things. They would make a really big impact, but they also do take more time. So the first is strengthening the Advisory Council's engagement on work groups through increased organizational commitments to EHE. I know Julie kind of put a plug in for this, and I'll make another plug, and I'll open this up as well, of just what, increasing some of that commitment through staff time, through if there are any additional resources for folks to really kind of have other people involved on the work groups so that there can just be more energy to move EHE forward. Because I think, like Julie mentioned, people who have been involved for a while and kind of needing some additional energy there to move the work forward. The second recommendation here is to have EHE's groups, so Advisory Council, all the work groups, really examine membership for diversity. So along various lines, you'll see there different kind of identity types. And really figuring out where do gaps exist, where should representation really be increased, and then brainstorming ways to engage underrepresented populations so that those populations can be involved in EHE. And so that's really thinking about one way to do this, and this is an idea, was different agencies that are involved with EHE committing to have maybe clients also be invited to get involved with EHE. What does that process look like to get people who are getting services through you all and your organization? How do they get involved and have their voice heard? So that was just an additional idea. And then the fourth recommendation under that umbrella was really looking at developing a strategy for embedding equity into EHE's work. I know that the equity work group is starting this and is going to be piloting this. But so again, the work is already happening. It's just a matter of how do you push it kind of across the board. Then we looked at high impact and low effort. So the first one there was really providing an overview of EHE's current structure. So I think that is an easy thing that can happen, just kind of sharing that information out to everybody of what does EHE look like. That visual that Julie shared in the beginning of the meeting, just sharing that out and letting everybody know what does it look like now. And then connecting the dots between EHE's plan and the work of EHE's work groups. And I'm going to talk about these monthly meetings, but connecting that, what is the work group doing? What is the focus of the work group and their objectives? And really making a real clear connection between that work and then the plan and the objectives and things that are in the plan seem to be really important to kind of connect, to improve the structure and to be clear about communication as well. Okay, and then we had a lot on communication. So these are the 5 recommendations under high impact and high effort for communication. So one big one was hosting a regular meeting, maybe once or twice a year for all of EHE's participants. So this is all of the advisory council, all of the work groups, and any other EHE related partners. The stakeholders recognize that this is really important, but it could take a lot of work to make this happen, but it would be really impactful, that it could build momentum, that it could be an opportunity to share its successes, and really think through and communicate again what EHE has done over the year. So it's a really good opportunity, but it would take some work and initiative on that to make that happen. The second recommendation here was to facilitate and host monthly or bi-monthly EHE meetings with having some rotating chairs hosting, so that, again, everybody involved with EHE could attend, you know, and having regular notes sent out so that people, again, are aware of what's happening with EHE overall, that, and anybody that is interested and wanting to learn more about EHE could attend. That's not just limited necessarily to people that are on the work groups or on the advisory council, but people that are interested in ending the epidemic can just kind of show up and participate and know what's going on there. Third, seems like a really simple one, but emailing EHE participants regularly, maybe every other month or once a quarter, sending updates to just let people know what's going on, what work is happening and what is happening and moving forward. Fourth, again, very simple, sharing a comprehensive list of all the work groups, including their goals, activities, and future plans. Again, a way to let people know if they want to get engaged, or letting, you know, able to forward that on to people they think might be interested in getting involved with those work groups. And then 5 is really having just meeting notes. Again, seems really simple, and just sharing those out. And so being able to do that. So that's the high impact, high effort recommendations for communication. There are a couple of others. So high impact, low effort, just encouraging EHE members to attend advisory council meetings and making it maybe a town hall approach, or allowing people to kind of, other members who are part of EHE in some capacity, either as a work group member or work group chair of some kind, being able to kind of have a section in the advisory council meetings where people can share back, or provide feedback, or provide thoughts on, you know, the work of the advisory council. I think this has been challenging because all the meetings have been virtual at this point, and so it's hard to kind of create an open space there, but it is possible, so that was a recommendation. And again, I think this might be happening already, but allowing space in your all's meetings just for regular updates from work group chairs. And then you'll see some of the other recommendations there are pretty low key, just sharing the EHE plan to people. And then one that we said would really be too challenging is to use the advisory council website to share information with EHE. We know that that is a Metro website, and so that can be hard to update, so that might not be the best approach. But again, maybe having some sort of centralized location where information about EHE can be shared and stored is something to consider for the future. Okay, and here's the last one. So recommendations around trust. The first is really just making sure people that are facilitating EHE's meetings, that this is happening with an intentional effort towards equity. So again, like I said, the findings from the survey indicate that people do feel like they have an equal voice at the table, but just being really clear that that's important, creating space for people to process and to kind of come up with new ideas and have ways to share that information out, that facilitators are able to navigate those kind of meetings with making that happen. Again, through trust. Again, connect, a lot of these overlap with communication and structure, but just having really clear steps for each work group. So this is communicated to work group members so that people can trust that the work of the work groups is moving forward and is collaborative and is moving ahead as stated by everybody in the work group. And then third, this was one that people felt like it is important, but also if there's not an overt conflict, do we need to bring somebody in? But this came up, bringing a conflict resolution mediator to work towards healing and transformation. If there are, kind of really thinking about sort of the underlying maybe distrust between certain stakeholders, certain partners, that this could be a solution to address that. So that was a lot of recommendations that I just threw out at you. These are just questions that I wanted to ask you all and pose to you. So one, and actually, I'm going to not show that right now. I'm going to actually stop sharing. So I'm curious, does anybody have any questions or thoughts at this time about any of the recommendations or any of the findings? were any of you all, like what stood out to you? Did anything stand out to you from any of that? Any of the recommendations or findings in particular?
Just for me, number 3 of your, I think the last recommendation stood out to me, and I found that interesting. So, and I don't know whether that's the conflict resolution is needed for the work groups or within organizations. How did that come about, that further recommendation of conflict resolution, that there needs to be work on that?
Yeah, sorry, Dr. Shakaka, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Yeah, that came out of, again, just some of the conversation, and that particularly came out of some of the key informant interviews. So just, again, this discussion of people that maybe have seen examples of just lack of trust among various partners and conflict happening, competition happening, maybe in a not healthy way, saying that there is a need for kind of undergoing and having sort of a conversation maybe about what happened in the past, how do we avoid that from happening in the future, especially if we're here to all collaborate together to end the epidemic. So that's where that particular recommendation came out. I think there was, conversation around how there isn't like an active conflict happening at this time between any of the partners, but that this is, again, historical stuff that might be under the surface, that, either we can say we're going to move forward and not necessarily acknowledge it, or we might want to go back and say, hey, we know this, it has happened, is under the surface, and we want to kind of rip the Band-Aid and get in there. I think it's a matter of how you all want to approach moving forward. So that's where that recommendation came from, though.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions or anything that stood out to you all?
I think some of the things that you listed as high effort, I would actually say, I think are maybe easier to accomplish than you might think at first glance. A lot of the stuff under communication, I think, is really doable. And I come at it from a direction of what I do, and I convene a lot of meetings and trainings for my job. And so, I think that I would certainly be happy to facilitate a lot of those meetings. So I don't know. I think that some of the things may be a little bit simpler to accomplish than we're imagining. At least I hope so.
Claire, that's encouraging. And I think, I think that's encouraging. I think a lot of folks, were considering the capacity of what they had, people in the room as we were going through the prioritization process. And so I think knowing that there are other people, including you all, that could maybe support some of this is helpful. And so that could be lower effort than, imagined by the folks that prioritize that list. So that's good to know. Any other thoughts or questions or comments?
I have a question. So going back to the findings about like historical conflict, or were any groups specifically identified by those key informants, or is there just an assumption that, like, where are they getting that from, I guess? Were they representing their organizations and saying there's this historical conflict, or did they point to different organizations? Like, do we know who those, like, if we were going to do like a reconciliation process, where would we start? Who would we start with?
Yeah, so I'm trying to, from what I recall, there were, I don't think there were specific organizations named, but the people that were talking about this distrust or these kind of conflicts had either experienced that maybe in the past, or like through their work in the HIV/AIDS sector in Middle Tennessee, because the community is very small, either have heard about it or seen an experience at a meeting, or in past work together, not even through EHE, but past work. So yes, and I think moving forward, if that is something that you all would like to do, from what I heard from especially the key informant interviews and the people that participated in those, it seems like they would be willing to kind of talk through that more in detail if this is the direction y'all want to go. I think it was definitely more of a general conversation because it was, you know, it's like we're trying to collect general information about, does distrust exist? Where is it coming from? That kind of thing. Does that helpful or answer your question, Morgan?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments or thoughts at this point?
I guess along the line of what Claire said, I think communication is important in making sure that the different groups feel connected. So if it could be as simple as sending out the email. I know we're all wearing 10 different hats or more, but you know, taking that time to send an email out so that the leadership team feels connected to the work groups and even the partners. I think that will be, you know, that would be important as a big step. Just as a little step that can make a big impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I know a lot of these are, as we were going through them, right, feel very simple. And, you know, just because the capacity and people's other work, it's like it's hard to make that happen sometimes. But sending an email, sending an update, letting people know about what's going on, yeah, that I think would help. Absolutely. Of just connecting the dots a bit for people. Well, in terms of next steps, I would ask you all, I mean, on my end, it seems like next steps would be sharing your all's feedback with maybe in an update email to all of the, you know, anybody that's involved with EHE to kind of say, hey, we've gone through this assessment process, we've gone through this recommendation process, and I can share, you know, and we have a report, we have this PowerPoint as well, and that these were your all thoughts and comments, and moving from there, you know, saying that we feel like some of this stuff is very feasible, of having a regular update meeting, of sending regular update emails, and then going from there. Does that feel like a good, just communicating that this meeting has happened and that a lot of these recommendations feel feasible, and that the goal is then to move forward with some of these big recommendations?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, Julie, I guess I'm going to turn it over to you then.
And I will take it from Julie.
Oh, sorry, Claire. I'm so used to giving it to Julie in these meetings. So.
You're fine. Thank you so much, Zara. It's really wonderful to have these recommendations. I feel like we really have some marching orders now, and I think we've been a little bit unmoored. So that feels really good to have sort of a direction that we can head in now with those recommendations. So thank you so much for all the work you've done on that. And I know that we are almost out of time here. So I'm afraid we don't have time for a longer conversation about those recommendations now, but I do think it's really important to say thank you so much, Julie, for all of the work that you've done over the past 2+ years. I know that I've personally really appreciated all of your hard work and dedication, even when there have been incredible obstacles to moving this initiative forward. And I don't think that we would have made an ounce of progress without you. So I think I speak for everyone when I say good luck in your next endeavor, and we will miss you so much. And as Julie moves on, we also want to revisit this EHE ideal of having shared leadership and knowing that EHE doesn't belong to Metro or any one organization, and appreciate that we all have additional organizations convening work groups. And so in order to get the best work and make the most progress toward ending the epidemic, we need our organizations to fully commit to the shared agenda of EHE. So I hope that as we end our meeting today, I can ask you all to ponder a few things in the time before our next meeting. So first, how can we increase all of our organizations' participation in EHE? What can we do to get the organizations that we represent more engaged? Can we provide staff time for involvement in leading EHE work groups or participating in EHE work groups? Is it even possible for some organizations to partially fund staff members to spend some dedicated time working on EHE projects? So these are the things I think we're going to have to do to really make some major progress over these next few months. So I hope that you will all take some time to think about that. And I'm going to pass it back quickly to Dr. Bullock for some final remarks.
Absolutely. Thank you, Claire. And I just want to share my great thanks with Julie as well and wish her the very best. She has kept me and Claire floating above water most days. So thank you, Julie. We are going to miss you. And should you have the inkling to come back to Nashville, we'd be more than welcome to have you back. I just want to make sure there aren't any announcements before we go. Does anybody have anything they need to add?
Just really quick, I'll let everyone know on the advisory committee that the Tennessee HIV Modernization Coalition has held 2 town hall meetings so far. They were highly attended. So we are getting education out there about why these laws need to be changed. The bill is almost completed. We're working on getting out some stigmatic language, but it does look like the bill will be introduced in January. So that work is moving forward. And then I also want to throw out there that Prevention Access Campaign has just started a new public health initiative called the Journey to 400,000. And that is an initiative to reach those 400,000 people that the CDC estimates that are living in the United States that are not virally suppressed, either because they do not know their status, they have fallen out of care, they cannot remain engaged in care for whatever reason. But we will be putting out toolkits very soon on how to help address racism and systemic issues within local communities, so we can get everyone the benefits of viral suppression.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? All right. Julie, do you want to say a few words?
Thank you all so much for your support. And, this is a completely volunteer effort in which you're all dedicating additional time in your day to the myriad of other things that I know everyone on this call is doing to be at this table and to, support the work of EHE. So I'm truly grateful to all of you and look forward to seeing all of the great work. I'll be staying in touch and just looking forward to seeing, what all is accomplished. So.
Thank you, Julie. And with that, we'll go ahead and end. This is our last meeting before the very new year. And so we'll just remind everybody, we'll send out a reminder. We stayed with the same time, and then we will meet in this point, February. So thank you, everybody. I wish all of you and your families a safe, happy holiday season and a happy, happy new year. And we will see you in the new year.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.